You know, when God called my family and I to come here over 5 years ago, in the natural, it was a stretch of faith. I'll just be honest. We were leaving a healthy church in the Dallas Metroplex, and we were coming back to Pennsylvania, but we were coming to a church that had been in decline. It was down to about 28 members, limited finances. The building had virtually been untouched since it was built in the 70s. I just remember being in church that first Sunday, and I heard those senior adults begin to pray collectively, and God spoke to my spirit in that moment. And I just knew that He was not finished here in Wrightsville. Over the last 5 years, we've made a lot of improvements. I can tell you, the sanctuary, it didn't look like the one I'm sitting in now. So much of what God has helped us to do aesthetically is really just indicative of what God has done spiritually. We've seen lives transformed. We've seen prodigal sons and daughters come back home to the house of God. We've seen the next generation raised up in the house of God. Having a heart for the house is so important because the house of God, the local church, is His plan for bringing the gospel to the world. Jesus said, "I'll build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it." He didn't put that kind of guarantee on anything else, but He's gonna build His church. And in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, when He told His disciples He was going to empower them with His Spirit to be His witnesses, He said, "You'll witness for Me in Jerusalem, in Judea, in Samaria, and then to the ends of the earth." That wasn't just vision casting, that was the plan. He was saying that you're gonna first be my witnesses right where you live. I believe God's plan for evangelism is so important. We have to always have a heart for the home front, a heart for the house, because if we're healthy at home, it's going to extend our reach with the gospel. With all of the improvements to this ministry facility that we've seen over the last several years, the outside of our building has been virtually untouched, and there are many needs that need to be addressed. And our Heart for the House campaign is centered on addressing some of these needs. Aside from the practical aspect of making the necessary improvements and repairs, I just believe that the house of God ought to communicate the heart of the people. It ought to be a place of excellence because God deserves our very best. Through the minor prophet Haggai in the first chapter, God says to His people, "Build a house for Me so that I may take pleasure in it." I read that and I kind of wondered, why would God pleasure in a house? I mean, He's enthroned in the worship of angels in heaven. What could He use a house for? But as I studied that chapter, I recognized that God was saying the outward condition of the temple was indicative of the spiritual condition of the hearts of God's people. There's something about honoring God's house that honors God. God's been so faithful, and I can't begin to describe what the future will hold, but we can dream. When people drive by this church property, we want them to see that not only is this a church that has a great history, this is a church that has a great future. And so on May 5th, as a church, we're going to be coming together to bring a significant offering that honors the house of God. It's our Heart for the House offering. And we believe that God's going to use this offering to help us to complete the last phase of renovations the same way that we've completed all the previous phases, debt-free. We're believing that this is going to be a miracle moment for us as a church, that we can not only celebrate what God has and is doing, but that collectively we can bring this offering in celebration of what God is going to do. Maybe you're watching this and you don't even attend our church, and yet you stayed with me this far because in some way our church has had an impact on your life. Well, I want to invite you to be a part of investing in the future of what this church is called to do. I want to invite you to come be a part of that celebration service with us on Sunday, May the 5th at Wrightsville Assembly of God.